Welcome back to another episode of the Slice of Mentorship Podcast. I'm your host, Igor Gorlatov. We're here to bring you the best mentorship insights thanks to our sponsor, Advisory 5. If you're a health tech venture looking to scale, Advisory 5 is your go-to for expert advice and a network that can catapult your startup to the next level. Today, we are thrilled to have Justin Webb, the Belk Distinguished Professor of Business and of Business Innovation at UNC Charlotte's Belk College of Business. Justin is a powerhouse in the world of entrepreneurship and innovation, with a focus on tackling poverty and economic inequality. He's got his fingers on the pulse of everything from institutional voids affecting entrepreneurship to market-based solutions for poverty. In today's episode, we'll delve into Justin's role as co-director for the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at UNCC, explore his research on the influence of formal and informal institutions on entrepreneurship, and discuss how mentorship can be a game changer in this space. We'll also touch on his pragmatic approach to juggling teaching, research, and innovation. So buckle up, because this is going to be a deep dive you won't want to miss. Hello, Justin.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Slice of Mentorship podcast this morning.
Sure. Happy to be here.
You wrote about the influence of formal and informal institutional and regulatory voids on entrepreneurship. Can you break that down for us in layman terms?
Yeah. So you're referring to my research in developing and emerging economies, right? And when we talk about institutions, we're talking about the rules of the game. And we distinguish between formal institutions and informal institutions. And the formal institutions are your laws and regulations, but then also infrastructure and the supporting apparatuses that go along with that: judicial institutions, educational institutions, capital markets, and such. Informal institutions are more of your norms, values, and beliefs within society that also provide prescriptions as to what is socially acceptable, legitimate. So when we talk about institutional voids and formal and informal institutional voids, we're talking about the absence or limited development of formal institutions, laws, so the lack of clear property rights, lack of laws and regulations around contract enforcement, lack of reliable utilities. And you have the same thing on the informal side as well, where it's not a lack of norms, values, and beliefs. There's always norms, values, and beliefs, but it's the norms, values, and beliefs that support efficient and effective market transacting operations. So gender biases are significant within developing and emerging economies. So in some societies, women cannot get bank loans. Women cannot operate within certain market spaces. They have household duties during the day that do not then allow them to work outside the home. So significant constraints there, and there are other types of informal institutional voids as well, which we can talk about. Yeah.
So what inspired you to pick this topic for your research?
Well, it was a guy by the name of Jeff Kistrick. He and I have worked together for 10, 12 years now. He was another doctoral student at the time, and he was studying base pyramid markets, these highly impoverished markets within developing and emerging economies where folks live on a couple dollars per day, 70% of the world's population. So a very significant need. He was studying it, and I was studying entrepreneurship, and he really wasn't studying entrepreneurship all that much, and so it just so happened that we were going to the same doctoral consortium at a conference. It was very expensive, the sort of conference for a student, and so he sent out an email, hey, anybody want to share a room? I was the first one to respond, and so we got talking about our research in the room, and around that time there was a special issue at a journal that was kind of overlapping with my interests and his, and so Jeff kind of turned me into a base of the pyramid guy, and I kind of turned him into an entrepreneurship guy.
Really cool how those connections happened serendipitously.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So, coming back to the research that you are doing, and by the way, are you collaborating on your papers still?
Jeff and I, no, we're not working on anything right now. I'm actually working with his doctoral student, Chris Sutter. We were recently down in Brazil, working in the favelas around Rio de Janeiro, and so that was more of a planning trip. But the plan is to study how entrepreneurs evaluate opportunities within these contexts, and then how those opportunity evaluations shape the actions that they take after the fact. Which that is actually the connection between opportunity evaluations and the actions that entrepreneurs take is a major gap within our research.
So before we talk more about potential gaps, I wanted to learn about some insights and things that could be used by communities that have to deal with those gaps. Are there any practical applications to your research that can be leveraged by those communities who want to foster entrepreneurship?
Well, I think so. So we study different things, right, within these contexts. So look, I'll give you one example.
Sure.
Right? So in Nicaragua, we studied how this NGO worked with dairy farmers there. Mm-hmm. And so you have these voids. You have these formal institutional voids there, right? And so these dairy farmers are out in the rural areas, and they're basically selling their milk to the cheese company. The cheese companies don't care what the quality of the milk is.
Okay.
And but they're not paying very much for the milk, and so it's nothing really well designed. And so this NGO comes in almost as an institutional entrepreneur. They're creating this new institutional framework for these dairy farmers to work in, right? And so in this project, they were working with 1,800 different farmers, mm-hmm. and they were giving them these technical practices, these business practices, filling the voids. Right? There's not educational institutions there, right? Mm-hmm. And so they might have the equivalent of a third, fourth, fifth grade education. And so this NGO is coming in and supplementing the education levels that they've got. Not only from kind of the basics of business, but then also giving them more in terms of how to run the farm and how to milk the cows. Because again, they don't understand germs, they don't understand bacteria, right? Mm-hmm. Because they don't see it. They don't have the education on that. And so when they're milking the cows, if they're not washing their hands before they milk, and if they don't clean the udder before they milk the cow, then they're getting dirt and such into the milk, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not good enough for the milk companies who are willing to pay more. But then there's also the thought that, well, if I wash my hands, that's something that is cold. But then if I milk the cow, that's something that's hot and cold, that's going to give me arthritis over time. Mm-hmm. Right? So you have to get them past those beliefs. And the struggle there as well is that they might wash their hands 9 out of 10 times, and then they forgot, or they're in a rush or whatever it is, and right, they don't wash their hand the 10th time. And then they get there and they spoil the whole bucket of milk. So that's it's the NGO working closely with the dairy farmers as the entrepreneurs within the space to really teach them what they need to do. So in terms of the key takeaways, is how does the NGO kind of signal the problems to the entrepreneurs when they're working in this space? How do they kind of set a vision for those entrepreneurs that, hey, this is where you're at right now, this is where you need to get to, that this is, and then here are the behaviors that they're going to get to, because you got to understand they're living on a few dollars per day, and the NGO is also asking them to make investments mm-hmm. that are, when you're a farmer, those investments that you make in the springtime aren't going to pay off until the fall. That's very difficult. So Yeah, it's a difficult program. The NGO started with 1,800 farmers. I think they ended up with about 1,200. But they also help provide them structure, get them into collectives, get collection centers to where it's for the milk companies to come out to those rural areas where the roads aren't good. Right, it takes a long time. What might take us a half hour here in the U.S. might take 3 or 4 hours there. And so it has to be worthwhile for the milk companies to come out and get the milk, so they aggregate them into collection centers and such to give them economies of scale. So it's that sort of learning. It's more about how do you change the institutions? How do you give them kind of the scaffold to build on?
So in this particular example, what was your connection with the NGO or farmers as part of your research? Was it like you were observing what the NGO was doing for like takeaways, what worked, what didn't? Or were you consulting with the NGO based on other research that you've done with other organizations? Like, how did this collaboration work?
Yeah, it was a research relationship, more not a consulting. Now we'll provide them what we find and what we talk about, but I think a lot of that they already know. But for us, it's understanding what they're doing, what works and what doesn't work through observations, through interviews with their trainers, interviews with the entrepreneurs, trying to understand what they're thinking about. It's looking, not only observation, interviews, but then also going through their documents and seeing where they're making investments while they're doing those sort of things as well.
So what I'm hearing, it's like critical work with entrepreneurs, and for entrepreneurs, this every decision, almost life and death decision, because they're on substance levels in their business. So a lot depends on like buy-in from those entrepreneurs and them agreeing to try things and make those investments. How exactly does it happen, and does mentorship play a role in making those behavioral changes in these entrepreneurs?
Well, it's mentorship, it's education, right? There's a classroom component to it. And then the NGO is working closely with each of the farmers as well. Right. And they'll set up like a model farm. Right? One of the things that they do to kind of help the farmers envision what the future can be like, right? They set up a model farm with the better fences and with the wells and planting the grasses that they have, right? I mean, one of the things you got to understand, Nicaragua, before I went there, I was thinking Latin America, okay, this is going to be kind of jungly, but the northern part of Nicaragua for 9 months out of the year is a very arid region, and then they have a monsoon season for 2 or 3 months. Very different from southern Nicaragua, but so it's very difficult there. And so one of the investments that they have to make is into these special African grasses that they've brought in that are more heat resistant, arid resistant, but it's working. It's working with them. It's closely working with them. So there's the mentoring, there's the educational component, but then it's the mentoring as they go working within the field. Yeah.
And just to close the loop for me, so you're doing this research with the NGO, you're studying the farmers. Once your research is complete, how is it going to be used? How do you envision it helping fill the voids in other communities?
So, it depends, right? It depends on how we use it. But typically, we're writing this for an academic journal. That research was published in Journal of Business Venturing, but which then it takes time for that research to have a more significant impact, right? We report back to the NGO and provide them what our thoughts are, but again, that might be something that they already know. But then the research that we publish in the academic journals, over time, that gets incorporated into textbooks, and so that's one way. The hope is as well that consultants are reading the research that we publish in these journals, and then they are more immediately translating that into solutions for other NGOs we work with NGOs, we work with micro-lending organizations, we work with others as well. So it's those different routes that the research has an impact. Now, as well, we might decide that, okay, we publish this in Journal of Business Venturing, which is more of an academic journal, but maybe we could publish this research in a different journal like Business Horizons or California Management Review. I haven't done that with this research, but that's something that we could do as well, which is more kind of a pracademic sort of article. Journal.
I know in the past there have been a lot of issues with providing help to the so-called like developing countries because, for example, when the US or some developed countries went to help, they would, okay, let's send them free stuff, free technology, free food, and that kind of kills entrepreneurs on the ground who are working to provide these resources, or there are unintended consequences of help. So you build something and then there is no capability or infrastructure to continuously support this. So this kind of work that you were researching seems to be like building internal capabilities and building infrastructure. So kind of how do we spread the word so that instead of doing things that can destroy those communities or hurt those communities, they prioritize help that actually is building sustainable businesses and supports local entrepreneurs. That's kind of what the challenge I have in my head.
Right. Well, what you're talking about is give them a fish and feed them for a day, or teach them how to fish and feed them for a lifetime. And there has been a shift from what we would call charity-based solutions to poverty towards more market-based solutions to poverty, these entrepreneurial solutions to poverty that we're studying here. This is a complex issue. People have been studying this for 50, 100 years, right? It's a very complex issue. I think we are looking at it at a different perspective, which I think is good. We're trying to understand more about how the individuals on the ground think about things. How can you maybe change a little bit of the way that they think without changing their norms and their values and beliefs? How can you get them to change the way that they work? How can you get them to work more effectively? But yeah, I mean, we're not going to solve, studying one NGO in Nicaragua is not going to solve all the problems in Africa. It's going to solve all the problems in Nicaragua.
I guess it's less about the question. I just shared my perspective that there are ways to help that help.
Right.
And there are ways to help that don't help at all.
Right. So, I mean, here's the reality as well. As outsiders looking in, this is a highly impoverished context. But you got people at different gradients of poverty as well. You got some folks that are in extreme poverty, and that's where they've been for an extended period of time, for years, right? They're a very vulnerable set of individuals. Those folks probably need charity to get them to a more stable foundation so that they can feel a little bit more comfortable taking somewhat of a risk. So there is still the need for charity. But there are other individuals that are maybe at more transient levels of poverty, or they're just above the poverty line, to where maybe they are at a place where they can take a little bit more of a risk, that can participate within these sort of programs. So you have to understand people's situation as well, and what they're going to be comfortable doing, and what they should be doing. You don't want to make them worse off if you're asking them to take a risk, right? That could be very bad. So you have to understand the situation as well.
I think you're bringing an interesting point about this gradients of poverty, and also like challenges you have to make in those decisions. And also there are gradients in terms of filling the voids. So the example you're giving is great. So no moral dilemmas, but usually the voids are filled with like kickbacks, bribes, dealing with corruption. And this is the only way to do things in some of those countries, or dealing with dictators or like not really nice people who make decisions. But if you don't deal with them, you cannot help people. Like, do you have a perspective on filling those like voids? And
so yeah, that was another paper that we wrote a couple of years ago. So most people talked about formal institutional voids, right? So the lack of laws and regulations to clearly specify how people can give them clarity in terms of their expectations when they're operating. Give them security, give them the know-how, right? But there's the voids there. And so many people talked about for the longest time how informal institutions substituted for these formal institutional voids. So informal institutions being the norms, values, and beliefs in the networks, the social capital that, and so you did see things like resource sharing arrangements among family and friends. You see things like informal lending, informal insurance mechanisms that are more localized, that came about within a community. Of course, there are, so the paper that I'm talking about, was conceptualizing what we refer to as informal institutional voids, right? So sometimes, yes, informal institutions can help substitute for formal institutional voids, but that's not always the case. These are often community level mechanisms, but you think about a bank and it can diversify its investments across a region, many individuals, that when you're within a local community, the risk goes much higher. Well, you look at these informal lending, some of them are going to have 50%, 100% interest rates. Yikes. Informal insurance mechanisms, right? If somebody gets injured, then that insurance mechanism can help address that problem, that individual problem. But what if there's a flood? What if there's an earthquake? What if there's a fire? What if there's disease, whatever, that affects the entire community? Well, then informal insurance mechanism is going to collapse because it has no diversification at all. Right, and you know, there was another project that we did in Ghana, and we were talking to some of the faculty at the universities over there. And one of the things that I had read previously was that there's a lack of trust within, right? And so in some cases, right, if you have a family that's tight knit, you got trust there, and there's going to be sharing and such, or close friends. But when there is a lack of trust within the broader community, you're not going to see these sort of mechanisms. And again, any faculty said, yeah, well, you can trust that if you trust in someone, you're going to get screwed, right? And so there's that informal institutional void as well. You talked about some of the kickbacks. You think about some of the elites within the community, right? So the NGO comes in and they're working with a community. Well, they work through somebody, and that somebody can misappropriate some of the resources that come into the community. That's another problem. So you have this case where sometimes informal institutional voids can't fill the informal because they're voids. They too can't fill the formal institutional void. And then you have instances where something's going to fill that void. And then, so this is a case where we were studying down in Guatemala. You got the gangs, all the gangs that fill the void. And so you have this kind of semi-formal, illegitimate institution now with the being of the gangs. And right, they have their monitoring and enforcement mechanisms. They have their rules that they apply to the society in place of the formal institutions. And so that creates a very precarious, dangerous sort of situation for entrepreneurs within those contexts. So you don't want to have the case where something's always going to fill a void. You don't want that criminal element doing that.
I wanted to ask about, like we talked about, on the one hand, something theoretical, and this is where we started, but then it became very tangible, and like people's lives trust how society is built. So your work has potential to impact a lot of those lives. What are the biggest one or two insights that were surprising for you from your research?
Within that context, exceptionally challenging context, and how you look at success is different within that context, right? You always have the outliers, but you don't have the same level of success. You don't have the same innovation that you have in the US and other developed contexts. Success is more about stability. Having stability, having a good you can have a good income as well. And so when we were down in Brazil, we were walking around talking a lot about the entrepreneurs within the different favelas. And one of the things, and we haven't studied this as scholars either, we've studied similar concepts like grit or frugality and how those things influence entrepreneurs' behaviors, but we haven't studied what I seem to keep picking up on, which was discipline. And when the success stories that we saw within those contexts, the entrepreneurs were very disciplined. They had very good financial discipline in terms of, well, we're going to make this money, we're going to keep this money in the business, we're going to make investments otherwise so that we can grow this money. There was task discipline. We just got to do this right. This is how the task needs to be done. That we can't do. We're going to have to do it again tomorrow until it is right. Good behavioral discipline. Within those contexts, there might be drug use and drinking and gambling or such, and we might have some of that in the U.S. as well. We also have our distractions. We can go to a ball game, or we can buy a nice car. We have different distractions and things. Time discipline in terms of how they're investing their time. This is my business. I have to be here at the business from this hour to this hour. It's a very labor-intensive sort of context, right? Because you lack the property rights, right? And so people aren't comfortable making investments in productive assets. And so then it becomes a very labor-intensive context. And then, right, the hours that they work are much longer. They have the successful entrepreneurs have very good time discipline. So this is not something that we've really studied at all as entrepreneurship scholars. How does discipline influence the types of behaviors? What is good discipline? But you get out and talk to entrepreneurs in the U.S. and Charlotte here as well, and the successful entrepreneurs, you hear them talk, and they're talking about their own discipline as well. So that's one of the key takeaways, I think, is just the same thing that influences the entrepreneurs there and influences their success there seems to be, right? And this is based on some interviews, and so it's kind of qualitative evidence, but it seems to me that the successful entrepreneurs in these highly impoverished contexts, their discipline allows them to reach their stability, their success, which is the same thing in the U.S., just at a higher level of success. So I think that's something that we're going to have to study going forward.
Very cool. Thank you. I love that theme and example and the connection that you've made to entrepreneurs in developed countries like the US, like the idea of discipline. And this thing really resonates with me, what you shared, because this is something that I've seen being involved with Innovate Charlotte, working with entrepreneurs from different backgrounds, those who are consistent, those who, like, you can get great ideas from a team of mentors, but those who are able to execute on those ideas consistently made a lot more progress than those who struggled, even when they were provided with this focus. So let's move on with our conversation. You are a co-director for the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at UNC Charlotte. So what exactly do you get paid to do?
Yeah, I'm co-director alongside Devin Collins and his group. Laura Smales is an assistant director as well on that side of campus. But I'm more on the academic programming side of things. Their side of the things is more community facing. Now that community is students, faculty, and broader Charlotte community as well. But you're asking me about me, which is more about the academic programming side. And so, in 2018, we had one course in entrepreneurship at the undergraduate level in the Belk College of Business. We had one course in entrepreneurship at the graduate level. And so we rolled out our graduate programming first. So we have a graduate certificate now. We have an MBA concentration that came in fall 2018. And then last year at the undergraduate level, we rolled out something very similar, an undergraduate certificate, open to all students on campus who are at least a junior. Mm-hmm. So we're rolling out similar programming at the undergraduate level. And so that's my time is designing that program and what it should look like, and so we have we can talk about the design, but we're trying to build entrepreneurial competencies among our students. My belief is that for this to really work, it has to be interdisciplinary programming, and so it's open to all students on campus. But at the same time, there are things that we can teach. And they bring some of their knowledge to the program, but I want it to be more of an interdisciplinary program over time. So my belief is that the Belk College of Business should be delivering the core entrepreneurship programming to the certificates, and then there should be kind of the innovation application courses that are being delivered by the respective colleges, by College of Arts and Architecture, by College of Engineering, Data Science, Computing Informatics. They should be doing their innovation application sort of courses there. Right now, the way that I think about it is that it's a puzzle that you have to solve, right? But it's a puzzle that when you buy a puzzle, you go to your Walmart and you buy your puzzle. You get a box with a picture on it that shows you what the puzzle looks like. And you have these kind of guidelines of, well, you're going to start with the corners and the straight edges, and then maybe there's a hint of red in the puzzle, and so you're going to focus on that spot, and then there's a hint of yellow in a different spot, and then you're going to focus on that next, and then the puzzle starts taking shape, and you start looking right. In entrepreneurship, the puzzle is you don't know what it looks like. And you don't have the straight edges, and so you have to figure it out. And so you got to bring the different dots that you need in entrepreneurship of connecting the dots. You got to bring your different dots in terms of, this is what the customer need is. This is what I believe the solution to the customer need is, and this is what I believe is how we should be delivering that solution to the customer. Bringing all these different dots together to start forming the puzzle that is your venture. So the business school can deliver some of those dots, but they need to get other dots from their respective domains.
From my conversations with other professors and people who are involved with universities, I'm hearing that universities are not great at innovating and changing ways. And in our conversation before, you mentioned the challenge of, for this interdisciplinary focus on entrepreneurship, that within the current system, there is limited space to add stuff, or limited space to engage professors of those other colleges to be involved in this. So what has been your experience so far from innovating within the system? And do you think it's possible to do this without breaking glass, or there should be some more disruptive change at some point to really make a major impact and accomplish what you want to do?
You'll probably have to ask that question again, as I'll get some components to the question. But Yes, I mean, when you think about working within a university institution, it's a different sort of context, right? And every college has its own requirements for the students that are going through their programs. This is what you need to do to get your degree within this area. And we have faculty, and we hire faculty very slowly, right? I mean, it all depends on state funds, and we gotta ring the state for those funds to get what we need and to deliver something new. And they might give us a new line once every 3 or 4 years to bring a new person in and start teaching 3 or 4, maybe 5 courses. So the extent to which we build new things is a little bit slower than what you would expect in a corporate sort of setting. Right, and students have those required courses that they have to go through. So asking students then to take more courses, well, you have to convince them of the value of it. I think we're doing that. But then you also have to have for interdisciplinary program, right? I mean, I'm coming in to say engineering or arts and architecture or whoever else, and I'm saying, hey, this is something that the students really need. This is something that you want to build, and I think they're excited about it, but their faculty are allocated to certain courses. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to take some time to do that. So we're taking baby steps. And we're taking advantage of opportunities within our constraints, right? So we have some neat things going on. We got, right, so you take a baby step. Instead of having initially an interdisciplinary certificate, we'll offer a course. And if the students seem to like the course, then we'll add another course. And then eventually we'll have that interdisciplinary certificate. Chris Elmore, co-founder of Ad Exchange, here in town. He's been teaching for us for a while, but he was willing. It was something that he was enthusiastic about. He's got a music background and such. So
ukulele.
Yeah. So he always wanted to connect with the art students. So he's teaching a class in the College of Arts and Architecture on entrepreneurship in the arts. So that's our first baby step in that direction. And we want to build out more within the Belk College as well. And so one of the great things is that we have Rob Cummings, founder of Deal Cloud, formerly at Falfurious now, and Chris Halligan, who's at Pazer here in town. Mm-hmm. They both wanted to teach, and now they're going to be co-teaching a class on entrepreneurial action and organizing within our graduate programming.
Very cool.
In spring. And then we did get one of those new lines, and so we hired Nathan Hayes, who's going to come in and teach a corporate entrepreneurship course in the spring as well. So when we get the resources, we're applying them and taking, kind of building out our vision for things, but we have to operate within kind of the resource constraints we have. You asked about breaking the glass.
Yeah.
We're an institution. I've been in contexts where maybe some of that glass has been broken. Mm-hmm. And in a way, the institution was built, but it wasn't institutionalized. Mm-hmm. And when certain individuals then leave and it's not institutionalized, it kind of falls apart. So that's not my personality. I think that we need to collaborate, even if it takes a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. It takes a fair bit longer. I think you need to build those relationships, make sure that it's done right, so that you can build the institution and institutionalize it.
That's an interesting perspective, and I love how it contrasts with some of the things I've heard from Mike Morris, for example, who would do things under the radar at first, get buy-in, and that was his advice for innovating within the institution.
Yeah. I worked with Mike. So Mike hired me at Oklahoma State. We were the founding cohort of faculty in the School of Entrepreneurship at Oklahoma State University, and he really did build things very well there. And we had so much going on. But yeah, Mike does kind of push things through, and maybe in some cases he might rub individuals the wrong way, but he has a passion for what he's doing. And there's the saying of, well, this is the way that it's always been done. Well, he doesn't like that sort of response, because there's always maybe a better way of doing it. And it's not only that, but it's about a passion for what the students need. And I believe that we should be giving the students what they need. And so I think it's that passion that he's trying to do better. And sometimes it becomes a little bit abrasive, but it is what it is, right? And there's two different ways of skinning the cat. We did fantastic things at Oklahoma State when we were there. Got awards at every level of the program, undergraduate, master's, PhD. So we did great things, but yeah.
And it's cool that you kind of understand that perspective. You have yours, and I appreciate your very detailed answer on this. Speaking of what students need, I love that point you brought up. I'm a student of marketing myself, and I'm learning that there are things that people know they need, or they kind of are clamoring for it. And there are things they don't know they need. It's like a blind spot, but once they see it, they don't want to bet a horse, they want a car. But if you ask them, they will not tell you because they don't know what's possible. So I think in our conversations with you, we talked about what students want at UNC Charlotte, and a lot of them are looking to build a corporate career. They're not necessarily looking at entrepreneurship as a career path. Is it still the case? And then how does it fit into your vision to integrate entrepreneurship into the curriculum?
Yeah, I think there's a cultural change at UNC Charlotte that we have to undertake. We do have a strong corporate presence in Charlotte. I think job stability is something that people want. It's what I want. So I think, but at the same time, I don't think that's completely disconnected from what the corporations want nowadays and what we can help students develop nowadays. I'm going to clarify that a little bit. So I was recently asked to talk to some engineering students about our entrepreneurship programming. And so one of the things that I thought was, okay, well, why is this relevant to them? All right. And what do they want? They want a job, right? And so I did some research and looked up online, what are employers looking for from new hires in 2023? Right. And I got a number of, top 10 or top 12 lists and that sort of thing. And commonalities across those are things like unstructured problem solving, analytical, creative, resilient, self-motivation, self-management, project management. I mean, those are things that we are teaching within the entrepreneurship programming. They can get some of that as well. Maybe if they're engineering students, they're getting their analytical skills there. But if you're thinking about becoming a project manager, right, you need, again, you need not only the dots in terms of the engineering and the technical side of things, but your company is also going to want you to have some business acumen as well. And so they got to have those complementary skills. And so it's trying to give them an understanding of what they're going to need, not only when they graduate, but then 5 years, 10 years after they graduate, and trying to impress that upon them. But at the same time, you can lead the horse to the water, but you can't make them drink, right? It has to be a student choice to a certain degree as well. Perhaps we can make some required courses in entrepreneurship. I think that's great. I think one of the things, I mentioned Mike Morris, right? And one of his phrases was, every student an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Every student an entrepreneur. And that's not meaning that every student's going to start a business, but at least they have some ability to think and solve these unstructured problems, to see new opportunities and understand maybe how to take advantage of the opportunities within a corporate setting. to be resilient, to know when to pivot, know when to persevere. I mean, right? So, I think I got a little distracted there, but I think we have to change the culture. We have to change the culture. How do we change the culture? I think we have to, different ways. Going back to the NGO in Nicaragua and the things that they do, we have to show them the vision, right? We have to have that model farm. We have to have, alumni that we showcase that says, here are your role models, here are your mentors that you can access through the university. We need to have more experiences on campus that are entrepreneurial. Hackathons, we have those. But we need to have more kind of competitions to solve bigger problems, bringing students together from different disciplines to solve problems on clean energy or deep fake or whatever, right? We have the Charlotte Venture Challenge. We need to make that bigger. We need to have more of those sort of experiences and events for the students to participate in. Over time, that will change the culture. But again, what the corporation's looking for nowadays, it's the same. It's one of the same. We have to impress our students upon that.
As you were explaining this, it makes total sense. One idea that came to mind, and I wanted us to reflect on this, you are responsible for the academic side of things, which is like courses, certificates, and this is the standard thing that academics offer. And then to change the culture, you need experience. You don't necessarily need theoretical knowledge. You need people to feel, sense, try, and then ask questions. And with those questions, take the courses because now they want the answers. How does it combine into your kind of thinking about change? What's the right combination in your time towards academic and experiences, or is it part of the Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation?
I think it's part of the center's responsibility to figure out that balance. And so now I'm working more closely with Devin and Laura than we have ever in the past. I know more of what they have going on. They know more. And so we have more of a unified vision of where we're wanting to go with the university and entrepreneurship and innovation at the university. We still need to build some stronger connections between what we're doing. And so they have a credentialing program where students can participate in different entrepreneurial experiences and then get a credential for going through those different experiences. Well, let's translate some of those students into the academic programming. Mm-hmm. We also need to get more of the students that are in the academic programming involved in more of the events as well. So it goes both ways. We're working on it, and we'll get there. But yeah,
it's very cool to see this collaboration happening. Are there any insights you've already made from joining forces?
I think the insights are more of where we were missing things before and how we can make some of these better connections. What do we need kind of cohesively going forward? I think that's where the connections are. The connections that we need to make are now these economies of scope, doing more with the same amount of resources. Connecting students across these different programs, getting faculty involved, faculty that were involved in their side of things, getting them involved in more of the academic programming side of things, our academic faculty getting more involved in the events as well. So
very cool. I also know that you kind of, and you mentioned some collaborations with entrepreneurs who are local to Charlotte. I know that you partner with corporations as well. Could you talk about the most exciting programs on the horizon for your center?
Partnering with corporations?
Yes.
There was one really neat collaboration. I didn't lead it. It was led by Faith Neal, who is one of our finance professors. But it was connecting with Truist right? And you mentioned more to kind of the corporate town right here in Charlotte, but even not only is it a corporate town, but many of the most prominent corporations here in town are in highly regulated industries. And so, we got to play by the rules. But even now you're seeing more and more that even within these highly regulated industries, we need to innovate, we need to change, right? And so this was a great experience that Faith Neal put together and organized for all of the faculty within the Belk College. Got computing and informatics involved as well. And it was working with Truist over a 2-day experience where, how do we onboard new customers and avoid fraud? I don't think I want to go any more detailed than that because it was kind of their thing, but yeah, it was the students then designing that onboarding process, working not only with Truist folks hand in hand, but also working with folks from Amazon AWS, working with folks from IBM, working with folks from FlowX, to put together the software basics for this. So this is what the process should look like. Let's put it into play. So that was a really neat experience for our students from a corporate standpoint. Yeah.
Overall, is it easy to pitch such collaborations to corporations, or do they come to you and pitch to you, we want to be involved? How does it work?
It's kind of, it was Faith maybe having a conversation with Eric Fender at Truist, I think early on maybe, and what can we do? They had Truist was working as well at Emory University, and they said, okay, let's do something with you. And so there was also some alumni from UNC Charlotte at Truist that were saying, hey, let's get more folks from UNC Charlotte involved. So I think it was a little bit corporate, and then I think it was more corporate driven. I think the extent to which we could have more corporations coming to us, that makes it easy on us to do it. Mm-hmm. Most of the work that I do has been with entrepreneurs. And so it's typically me reaching out to entrepreneurs and saying, this is what we're doing. We have a speaker series course that we do. Devin's taking that over now. But then also doing live case analyses. And so Chris Halligan's done some for me. Maggie Williams from Skiptown's done some for me. Some of my former students that are entrepreneurs now, they've done some for me as well. But it's coming in and saying, hey, here's who I am, and here's my venture. And it's a 20-minute kind of introduction. Here's the problem that I'm looking to solve. Mm-hmm. And then it's the students asking the right questions after that to fill in the details of the case to then deliver a solution. And that solution, depending on the complexity of the case, might be that evening, or they might go out and do research and come back a month later and say, this is what you should do and here's why. We have those experiences. We also have entrepreneurs that come in and say, most recently, Carl Brinkman came in and said, I want to start up a cardio kickboxing studio. I think that's going to be something that there's demand for. Can you help me do that? And so he's worked with my strategy class actually to kind of put together the initial. Let's understand the competitors. Let's figure out how we can position this cardio kickboxing studio from a competitive standpoint. And here's what your kind of initial internal environment should look like. Here's what your value chain should look like. And so then Carl will work next with an entrepreneurship class to start the next aspect of that. So we have those as well, kind of full semester sort of projects for our students, which are hands-on. Yeah.
No, this is awesome. And I know there are ideas that various entrepreneurship centers are trying around, like making students venture investors and allowing them to manage a small fund, or being involved in some of those decisions at the university level. So it's exciting to see those things happen. If someone watching this or listening to this wants to be part of that case, what's the process? Do they just reach out to you, or is there a different way to?
Yeah, they reach out to me. They reach out to Devin Collins. Devin, you mentioned the venture fund. He's putting together a venture fund right now.
Really?
What that exactly will look like, we don't know yet, early days. But one of the reasons he's doing that is because if you look at the wealth within Charlotte, and then you look at the number of business angels that we have, relatively, we have a very small pool of business angels to the amount of wealth that we have in and around Charlotte. And so he's putting together a program to help educate wealthy individuals that want to become business angels. And so there's an educational component to it. And then at the end of the program, there will be a networking connection component connecting them to other existing business angel groups. But in addition to that component of it, there's also the component of let's build a venture fund that's run by the university as well. So that's something that he's leading.
I love it.
Whether it's led by the university, whether it's led by students, that's to be figured out.
I love that you mentioned the state at some point in the conversation was looking at line items for individual positions. Then you're saying, and now we would like you to invest in this venture fund.
Yeah. That's not guaranteed, right? We will see about that, but something bigger.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you're pushing the boundaries at least, and this is something that is cool to see.
Yeah, Devon's group has a lot of flexibility in terms of what they do, more so than maybe on the academic side of things. And so they're doing a lot of great things. They've got not only the customer discovery program, which number one in North Carolina, and we also have the number one SBTDC underneath his group as well in North Carolina.
Wow!
In terms of impact, so we probably need to do better marketing.
Yeah.
So we have the number one research group while we're going through all the number ones, number one in North Carolina research group in terms of publishing in the top 3 entrepreneurship journals. So we have a lot of great things going, but Devon's group has other great things going. Inclusive Leadership Academy, so groups that are less represented on boards and leadership, and so it's a program that folks go through. Again, that gives them some education, and then at the end of it, connects them with organizations that are looking for individuals to serve on their boards, more diverse set of individuals to serve on their boards. So that's another great program that they're doing. They got mentoring that they do over there as well. They got the 49er Foundry, which is our incubator space that they run as well. So they got a lot of great things going on.
Very cool. So we talked about some of the challenges. We talked about the opportunities and the focus of your work right now. What's your long-term vision for entrepreneurship at UNCC? And are there any interdisciplinary collaborations you're excited about the most right now?
Long-term vision, School of Entrepreneurship. School of Entrepreneurship that can influence students around campus.
Different from the School of Business.
Different from the College of Business, yeah. It's a School of Entrepreneurship that's separate, serving all colleges.
Okay.
School of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, yeah, let's put it like that. I think that's where we should get. And serving, impacting all students. So going back to that phrase from Mike, every student an entrepreneur. Having them go through at least one course on entrepreneurship to engender an entrepreneurial mindset. More interdisciplinary collaborations. That's kind of the long-term vision of things. A more holistic infrastructure for an ecosystem within the university to support our entrepreneurial-minded students. So seed funding. We have you asked about collaborations that I'm excited about. Terrence Fagan's a professor over in engineering, and he's bringing Superfab Lab to UNC Charlotte, which my understanding is the only one in the Carolinas. Souped up he doesn't like the term makerspace applied to it, but let's just imagine a souped up makerspace on steroids, right? And this is going to be a great piece of infrastructure for our students to start transforming their ideas into actual products and solutions. To understand the feasibility from an engineering standpoint that goes along with the business ideas that they have. So that's another component of the ecosystem that we need. More hands-on experience, more events and such. So,
and this is where I might be a little bit biased as a member of Charlotte community, but how does Charlotte community and primarily entrepreneurial community fit into this long-term vision for entrepreneurship at UNCC?
Well, hopefully it's a give and take. The entrepreneurial community has given a lot to us already. I can get here and rattle on a bit, but I'm an introverted guy. And putting together a speaker series course, I thought that was going to take me 6 months. And I get connected to a couple entrepreneurs. Oh, you need to go talk to these 4 individuals. Let me make a connection. You need to go, next person that I talk to, you need to go talk to these 4 people. And so that class was put together in one really busy month of meeting with a lot of people.
Oh.
And just the enthusiasm, right? We got Chris Elmore, we got Chris Halligan, we got Rob Cummings involved in our classes now. We've got other entrepreneurs reaching out and saying, hey, if you need help, right? Since we announced this Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, we've had so many people reach out wanting to be involved. So that's fantastic. Hopefully, at the graduate level, we have been. We've been around long enough. We've been generating successful entrepreneurs. James Rivenbark is on his 5th restaurant here in town now. Office, Craft Bar and Kitchen, TWF. Blue Smoke House. So he's got a lot of different things going on. We've got another student that went out and started up a blockchain venture. They've gotten venture capital in that venture. Brian Cullinan's doing Canopy Media, background music business. He's doing very well. We've got other students that are getting positions at entrepreneurial ventures as employees. So it's all of that. We're trying to give back in that direction. We're also trying to give back. I think we have a certain obligation within reason to serve the community. And so we've got, for example, the SBTDC as part of our group in the center. But we're also participating in a program that Bank of America is leading to help disadvantaged entrepreneurs. So that's the educational. I think that needs to be bigger over time. Mike has a program now at Notre Dame. Urban Poverty and Business Initiative. Yep. And that is a program that's used across a number of different universities, and he shared his playbook with us. And so that may be a direction that we go in and lead in the Charlotte community. So we're exploring those ideas.
Very cool. So just shifting gears a little bit, what's the book that you're currently reading?
I don't read all that many books, and I read a lot of articles.
Okay,
I read a lot of articles.
There's a dense.
Yeah, and so I guess I printed out 20 articles on trust repair, because when I think about the problems that are. So we talked about the base pyramid, right? In these developing contexts, and there's a large informal economy there where folks are operating unregistered businesses and they aren't paying their taxes, and because they get nothing from the formal institutions, so why should I pay taxes? I'm not getting anything from them. And so that's another complex issue that they've tried to solve in many different ways, changing policies and education and whatever. But I think there's also a big trust repair component to it. And we've studied trust repair within organizations and between individuals, but not necessarily from an institutional standpoint. So I just printed out 20 articles on trust repair to start digging into that area. But in terms of books, a passion of mine that's emerged over the last 10 years, something that I really love is art. And I appreciate all forms of art, but I really love surrealism because you get the kind of the technical skills of the artist alongside the imagination that they've got and what they're experiencing and what they see around them that they're putting on the canvas or otherwise, and how they bring that vision, their own kind of unique way of bringing that vision is in a way that I could not imagine doing myself. I can see the strokes on the canvas, but I still, in 20 years, I couldn't do that. And so I read images. Mm-hmm. Instead of reading the books. There's a great book on Eckhart Hahn. He's an artist that I love. Eckhart Hahn, Der schwarze Hund trägt bunt. So it's mostly in German. Okay. There's some English to it, but fantastic artist. And Der schwarze Hund trägt bunt means the black dog becomes colorful. It kind of goes back to a Winston Churchill kind of depression, becomes colorful sort of thing. Another artist that I follow is Matt Hansel. He has a book coming out, a book on his work coming out in the fall that I've already ordered. Inner Demon Delectatio. Wow. It's how individuals can flirt with their demons and such, and how we've always kind of poo-pooed on that, but maybe that can be a good thing. Maybe it's okay if we do that to a certain extent. And so he has these wild paintings that bring together. He's a guy that can paint in every style. And so in these recent set of works, he's brought together Hieronymus Bosch, the Garden of Earthly Delights, all these kind of, these creepy little creatures and demons and such, but with the kind of the old Dutch masters. You think about the old cheese paintings. So it's kind of a mix of those, cheese and mushrooms, and it's really wild stuff, but it's fantastic.
A lot of what you said resonated with me, starting from trust, because I work with organizations as part of growth management, and kind of by figuring out how to create trust within a team and like foster trust. So that resonated with me, and your fascination with visual art is something that I found myself digging deep into, because I'm a very analytical person. And there is a lack of something in me if there is no exposure to a different form of self-expression. So when you were talking about strokes and how to make them, that's why I'm doing video and I'm doing podcasts, to get in touch with, I don't know, in a demon or in an angel, get to unlock that part of myself, and also to learn from photography, from art, to see how people think about imagery and what impact does it have on the person producing and kind of enjoying the art. So we could talk, we could do a separate conversation.
I would love it. It's something that become an obsessive passion for me.
Really?
So, which can be bad, but right now I'm trying to stay within limits.
Thank you for opening up on this. Yeah. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, you asked me that, to think about that, and
that's my favorite question.
Yeah. I've been blessed. God's treated me well. I've got a great family. I've got a great job. I live in a nice home. And I mean, there were probably a couple bike rides that I wouldn't have gone on this past year.
Okay.
And there were probably some investments that I probably would have done a little bit differently. But things have worked out quite well. So my advice for myself would be that just do what I set out to do. I had a vision for myself coming out of college. Jack Welch, former CEO of GE, PhD in chemical engineering, MBA. And I always wanted to teach, so I said, okay, my undergrad was chemical engineering. So I said, okay, well, let me get my MBA. My wife was in dental school at MCV, and I did my chemical engineering at VCU. So I said, well, let me stick around Richmond. I'll do my MBA first. Anyways, I thought that I would not become a CEO of GE or anything, but I thought, well, if I became a VP of R&D somewhere, that would be pretty cool. And then do that for a certain period of time, and then go back and teach. And when I was in the MBA program, I was assigned to somebody that turned out to be a very high status individual within Dwayne Ireland, within management. He became the president of the Academy of Management. He was the main editor for Academy of Management Journal. So it was just my life has been touched by serendipity, but this was just a serendipitous sort of thing that I was assigned to him, and I just started loving the business side of things. And I recalled being in the labs and while I was a chemical engineer and pouring stuff, and I was wearing gloves and whatnot. I could feel it going through my gloves, and I'm looking at the bottle, and it's carcinogenic, and it's this and it's that, and I said, that's not all that good. So I started working with him more closely. By the end of it, I said, well, I think I want to go into a business PhD program instead. And so I made a mad dash. This was late in the process. I made a mad dash and submitted my materials to Maryland, Chapel Hill, and Duke. Very different styles of programs, but I didn't hear back from Chapel Hill or Duke. Had a short interview at Maryland. Again, I was introverted, and the guy I was talking to, Ken Smith, an older guy since retired, he was more of an introverted, quiet guy himself. It was a very quiet conversation on the phone, so that didn't go well. I was bummed out, but you know what? There was one guy that had been accepted into a program at A&M where Dwayne Ireland was leaving University of Richmond, going to Texas A&M. They had a guy that turned down them for their PhD program because his father worked at A&M, and he wanted to come back and work at A&M himself, so he took a position at Indiana University, which opened up the spot for me at A&M.
Wow.
Serendipity. And yeah, I could go on numerous other cases since then. Having that vision early on in terms of what I wanted to do, and I had that pivot from becoming a VP of R&D to pursuing more of the business side of things. So that having that vision was good. Being willing to pivot, and then working hard.
Discipline?
The discipline of it. And so, you can't control things. I'm an academic, but there's an entrepreneurial component to it as well, because I'm writing articles for the market for other scholars. And the work comes back maybe when you don't expect. So if you get 3 deadlines in a month, you get a journal revision, article revision, you get a month to return that to the journal. Well, if you get 3 or 4 of those at a time, if you're lucky enough, then you got to be working your tail off to get that done. So there were weeks where I was working 80, 100 hours a week.
Wow.
And I don't do that anymore. But it's having that discipline early on, having that vision of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to do it and that sort of thing. And then just being in the right spot at the right time. So yeah, there's small things I would change, but overall it's just do the work. My parents impressed on me that, to have a good career, you got to work really hard for the first 10, 15 years, right? And then you can start relaxing after you've established yourself and you've reached a point in the hierarchy where you have a little bit more flexibility and you're in charge and you can delegate and that sort of thing, right? So yeah, I don't know that we're the smartest individuals, the Webbs, but we're disciplined, hardworking people, and that's set us up to be pretty good.
Thank you so much, Justin, for your time and for your insights.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's a wrap on the enlightening episode of the Slice of Mentorship podcast. A huge thank you to Justin Webb for sharing his invaluable insights on entrepreneurship, innovation, and mentorship. Justin, your work is a testament to the power of combining academic rigor with practical solutions, and we're grateful you took the time to share your wisdom with us. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. Your curiosity and engagement make this podcast what it is, and we can't wait to bring you more episodes that dig deep into the world of mentorship. A special nod to Advisory 5, our fantastic sponsor. If you are in the health tech space and you are not yet part of Advisory 5 ecosystem, you are missing out on a treasure trove of expertise and connections that could propel your venture to new heights. So, until our next episode, keep challenging the status quo, keep learning, and let's continue to elevate mentorship in all its forms. See you next time.